Hey everybody, this is Cave Cat again, here to bring you another episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. Today, it's time to get into the excitement of ancient Egyptian mythology. That's right, the show that I'm reviewing for episode 42 is Tutenstein. Tutenstein is an animated series based on a series of comics created by Jay Stevens and was produced by PorchLight Entertainment, the same studio that also produced Adventures from the Book of Virtues. I never thought that I would actually do a review of the show, being that it aired on Discovery Kids in 2003 before ending in 2008. But for some reason, I thought I would give the show the old college try. So what do I think of it? I'll get to that after I start this review. Anyway, to start things off, the show follows a young pharaoh by the name of Tutankamun, the name being a play of Tutankhamun, aka King Tut, but he actually goes by the nickname Tutenstein after meeting with a young African-American girl named Cleo Carter, along with her cat Luxor. The reason for this is because Tutankhamun died at a very young age after saving his best friend from a collapsing temple, so ended up getting mummified and sealed away for 3,000 years. Then one day in the present day, he was taken to a local museum where 12-year-old Cleo Carter works, working in the Egyptian exhibit room. Of course, on a dark and stormy night, Cleo and Luxor end up witnessing the revival of Tutankhamun after a lightning strike brings him back from the dead, while also giving Luxor the ability to speak and become the devoted servant to the newly revived pharaoh for some reason. Once that happens, Tut, now given the nickname Tutenstein, initially has no idea that a lot of time has passed since he died, and ends up having to find his way around the modern world, with help from Cleo and Luxor, of course. Yeah, the show is basically the whole fish out of water plot, where a character from another time or place ends up having to try and adapt to his or her new surroundings, despite the fact that said surroundings are completely unfamiliar to them. I mean, that plot has been done lots of times in a lot of shows, movies, and cartoons, and whether it works or not depends on how it's handled. In fact, quite a number of episodes have Tutenstein misunderstanding various modern customs that are far different from those that he's more familiar with back in ancient Egyptian times, while Cleo and Luxor try their best to set him straight, often with mixed results. However, aside from the fish out of water plot, this show, much like Adventures from the Book of Virtues, is actually an edutainment show, being that it focuses on teaching kids about ancient Egypt and the mythology that's associated with it. Well, what would you expect from an animated show that aired on Discovery Kids? But anyway, for the main characters, we have Tutenstein himself, who's supposed to be the main character of the entire show. While he has a strong sense of justice and kindness, he's also very vain, impulsive, and egotistical, but in the end, he always does the right thing to help his friends save the day. He's also under the possession of the Scepter of Was, which allows him to cast spells that will more often than not cause problems than actually fix them, as well as also banish evil demons back to the underworld. Cleo is Tutenstein's best friend, who often has to put up with Tut's rude and abrasive attitude, but she still cares about him just as much as he cares about her. She also wants to be an Egyptologist when she grows up, just like her dad, who we never see in the show at all. Luxor is Cleo's pet cat, who acts as Tutenstein's loyal servant after being given the ability to speak, though most of the time he can get put through the ringer by Tut's antics, while also being the straight man. Aside from the main characters, we also have other recurring characters throughout the series, such as Professor Bedetti, the curator of the museum, who's rather self-centered and believes that Cleo is nothing more than just a lowly employee at the museum. Roxanne Vanderweel is Professor Bedetti's colleague and assistant, though from what I've seen from the few episodes I've seen of the series, she's basically more competent, understanding, and clear-minded than the professor is. There's also Walter Jacobs, who serves as the museum's security guard, but he's the absolute definition of a lazy slacker who can't do his job right, being that he's dim-witted and a big coward. Other characters include Rosalie Rivara, a television reporter who is obsessed with getting the latest scoop on the strange goings-on at the museum, Natasha, who is Cleo's best friend and who tends to lie a lot, Cleo's mother, who doesn't really appear often throughout the series, and several others. And of course, since the show is all about teaching kids about Egyptology, we also get appearances from quite a number of various Egyptian gods and goddesses throughout the series, such as Osiris, Isis, Ra, Horus, Anubis, Thoth, Bastet, and many others. However, even the show is not without its share of villains, because of all the Egyptian gods and goddesses, we have Set, the god of chaos and destruction, who is the main villain of the series. Set's goal is to steal the Scepter of Was from Tutenstein, even sending his various demon lackeys to try and retrieve it for him, but they always fail to do so every single time. There's a lot of other gods, goddesses, and demons that appear throughout the series, but if I tried to list them all, we'd be here all day. And now the big question we've all been waiting for. Does this show live up to its expectations of teaching children about Egypt history and mythology and providing entertainment for kids of all ages? Well, yes and no. For being a show all about Egyptian culture, it's actually rather mediocre. Why do I think it's mediocre? For one thing, while the concept of a 3,000-year-old mummy being brought back to life and learning about the modern world around him does sound very interesting, it's also been done before. Also, for another, the pacing for each of the episodes is rather slow, and while there is action when several demons attack from the underworld, sometimes the action feels like it's rather tame. Then again, this was a couple of years after 9/11 happened, so it feels like a lot of action-packed shows seem to be watered down since then. And lastly, the characters, while still having their quirks, don't seem to get very much development, especially Tutenstein himself. In each and every episode, Tutenstein acts like a spoiled brat when having to be forced to pull his weight around the museum, and especially casting spells for his own selfish desires, only for the spell to end up going out of control because he never thinks about the consequences of said spell. Once that happens, he ends up learning a lesson about being kind to others around him and not taking shortcuts to get through life. But by the next episode, he's back to his selfish and lazy attitude once more, all because the producers keep hitting the reset button on his character. It's almost similar to Calvin and Hobbes, where the former never learns anything from whenever he tries to cheat his way through life, with a few rare exceptions. Tutenstein is that way as well, but at least unlike Calvin, he actually tries his best to do what's right and to actually make up for his mistakes. But it still doesn't excuse the fact that Tut always forgets the lessons that he learned from his experiences. At least in Adventures from the Book of Virtues, Zack and Annie always learned from their experiences when being taught by Plato and the others, except when the third season of the show ended up reusing several virtues from the previous two seasons, instead of using new and original virtues. But anyway, after what I said about Tutenstein, I think it's safe to say that the show gets 7.5 stars. I can't believe I had to say this, but after I gave the show a chance, it ended up not meeting my interests. Then again, the show is supposed to be aimed towards younger children, and I did hear that's going to get a reboot, so I'm a little bit worried about that, especially since it's said that's going to have a completely new look from the art style of the original show. Also, on that regard, why is it that a lot of new shows that are being shown on TV nowadays have the exact same art style, which a lot of people have been referring to as the Cal art style? Hollywood seriously needs to stop overusing that art style and let new animated shows use their own unique art style instead of constantly conforming to the same cookie cutter style that's been used for years now. But regarding Tutenstein, even if I'm not really too keen on that show, I think that Egyptology buffs will really enjoy the show and actually learn some things from it. After all, who says that some animated shows can't be entertaining and educational at the same time? Well, that about wraps up this episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. Just like before, don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more episodes or other videos that I might come up with. Until next time, see you in the future.